The first thing felt was pain. It moved through her body like fire, starting from her head and traveling down to her legs. She opened her eyes slowly, but everything was dark and filled with smoke. The smell of burning metal filled her nose. She coughed hard and tried to remember where she was. Then it came back to her. The ship, the alarms, the crash. Pushed herself up from the broken floor of the survey vessel. Glass and twisted metal surrounded her. Emergency lights flickered red, casting strange shadows on the walls. She looked around for the others, and the rest of the crew, but she already knew the truth before she saw it. She was alone. The bodies of her lay still in the wreckage, crawled to first. He had been her friend for 3 years. They had joined the Colonial Survey Authority together, dreamed of exploring new worlds together. Now he lay with his eyes closed, a deep wound on his chest. He was not breathing. Sat beside him for a long time. She did not cry. She was too shocked to cry. The world felt unreal, like a bad dream she could not wake from. Finally, she forced herself to move. Survival training took over. She had to think clearly or she would die too. She searched the wreckage and found some food supplies, a water filter, and a knife. The emergency beacon was damaged. She tried to fix it, but the internal parts were destroyed. No signal would reach the Colonial Authority. No one knew where she was. Stepped outside the broken ship and looked at the world around her. The moon was called 4 in the survey files. It was covered in thick forests with trees taller than any building on Earth. Strange plants glowed with soft blue and green light. The air was heavy and warm, filled with sounds she did not recognize. She remembered his voice from their last conversation before the crash. He had been reading the survey data out loud while she piloted the ship. "If we ever get stranded," he had said with a small laugh, "stay near water. Water means life. Life means food." Wiped her eyes and made a decision. She would survive, for herself, for the small chance that someone might come looking. She spent the first day building a simple shelter near the ship. She used broken panels and large leaves from the forest to create a roof. She started a fire using the ship's emergency lighter. She filtered water from a nearby stream and ate a small portion of her food supplies. When night came, the forest changed. The glowing plants became brighter, painting everything in soft light. But with the beauty came danger. Heard creatures moving in the darkness. Some sounded small, like insects or birds. Others sounded much larger, heavy footsteps, low growls, the snap of branches under great weight. She did not sleep that night. She sat by her fire with her knife in her hand, watching the shadows. The second day passed slowly. Explored the area around her camp, marking trees so she would not get lost. She found fruit that looked safe and tested a small piece. When she did not get sick, she ate more. She found tracks in the mud near the stream, large tracks with 6 marks like a creature with 6 legs. The tracks were fresh. Something was hunting in this forest, something big. On the second night they came. Was adding wood to her fire when she heard it. Silence, complete silence. All the normal sounds of the forest stopped at once. No insects, no birds, nothing. She stood up slowly, her heart beating fast. She held her knife tightly, though she knew it would do little against whatever was out there. The first shape emerged from the trees. It was massive, bigger than any wolf or bear she had seen in pictures. It stood on 6 powerful legs, each ending in curved claws. Its body was covered in thick, armored plates that looked like dark stone. Its head was wide and flat, with 4 glowing yellow eyes and a mouth filled with teeth like blades. Then another appeared, and another, and another. Counted 7 of them, a pack. They spread out around her camp, surrounding her completely. There was nowhere to run. She pressed her back against a tree and raised her knife, knowing it was useless. The largest one stepped forward. It had scars on its face and chest, marks of many battles. This was the leader, she understood, the Alpha. It lowered its head and sniffed the air, studying her with those 4 terrible eyes. Waited for death. She thought of Earth so far away. She thought of all the things she would never do. But the attack did not come. The Alpha made a low sound, something between a growl and a rumble. It was not aggressive. It was curious. The creature walked around her slowly, sniffing, watching. The others stayed back, waiting for their leader's decision. Did not move. She barely breathed. She met the Alpha's eyes not with challenge but with something else. Acceptance, perhaps, or maybe just exhaustion. The Alpha stopped in front of her. For a long moment they looked at each other, human and alien predator, prey and hunter. Then the Alpha turned away. It made another rumbling sound and the pack began to move. One by one they disappeared back into the glowing forest, silent as shadows. Fell to her knees. Her whole body was shaking. She did not understand what had just happened. Why had they not killed her? She was easy prey, weak and alone. She stayed awake until dawn, but the creatures did not return. In the morning she found their tracks all around her camp. They had circled her shelter many times during the night, watching, studying. She found the same tracks the next morning, and the morning after that. The pack was not hunting her, realized. They were observing her, testing her, waiting to see what she would do. She did not know if this was better or worse than being prey, but she was still alive, and as long as she was alive, she had hope. Looked at the tracks in the mud and made a silent promise to the forest, to herself, to memory. She would survive, whatever it took. 3 weeks passed on 4. Learned the rhythm of the forest. She knew when the sun would rise and when the strange creatures would come out to feed. She knew which fruits were safe to eat and which streams had the cleanest water. She built a better shelter, stronger and warmer. She was surviving. But she was never alone. The pack watched her every day. She would see their shapes moving between the trees, always at a distance, always silent. Sometimes she caught the glow of their yellow eyes in the darkness. They never came close, but they never left either. It was like living with ghosts. Started talking to them, not because she thought they could understand, but because the silence was driving her mad. She talked about Earth, about her family, She talked about nothing at all. The sound of her own voice made her feel less alone. Sometimes she thought the Alpha was listening. It would tilt its great head when she spoke, those four eyes watching her with something that looked almost like interest. She named them in her mind. The Alpha was the largest, the leader. There was another large one that stayed close to the Alpha, a female with darker armor and a gentler way of moving, called her the matron. She seemed important to the pack, and the Alpha was always near her. There were 5 others, 4 hunters, young and fast, who scouted the forest and brought back food. And there was a small one, barely half the size of the others, a cub. It was curious and playful, often getting too close before the Alpha would call it back with a low growl. Found herself watching the cub most of all. It reminded her of a puppy, full of energy and wonder. Once, it came within 10 meters of her camp before running away. She almost smiled. One evening, everything changed. Was walking to the stream to collect water when she heard a sound that made her blood go cold. It was a cry of pain, deep and terrible, echoing through the forest. She knew that sound. She had heard the pack make low rumbles and growls, but this was different. This was suffering. She should have stayed away. Every survival instinct told her to return to her camp and hide, but something pulled her forward. Curiosity, concern. She did not know. She found them near the ravine, a deep cut in the earth where the stream flowed faster. The whole pack was there, gathered in a circle. They were making sounds she had never heard before, anxious and afraid. In the center lay the matron. She was hurt badly. A deep wound ran along her side, cutting through the armor plates and into the flesh beneath. Dark blood pooled on the ground. Her breathing was weak and fast. Her eyes were half closed. Understood immediately. Another predator had done this. The forest was full of dangerous creatures. The matron must have been attacked while hunting or protecting the pack. The Alpha stood over his mate, helpless. He pushed his nose against her face, making soft sounds. But there was nothing he could do. Did not understand medicine. They did not know how to heal wounds. When a pack member was injured like this, they could only watch them die. The pack noticed. Several of the hunters turned toward her, their eyes bright with warning. But they did not attack. They were too focused on the matron. His heart beat fast. She thought about the back at her camp. She had antiseptic bandages, biogel that could seal wounds. She had helped injured crew members before. She knew basic medical care. But this was insane. These creatures could kill her in seconds. They were wild predators. They had no reason to trust her. She looked at the matron, struggling to breathe. She looked at the alpha, unable to save his mate. She looked at the cub, pressing close to its mother with small, frightened sounds. Made her decision. She ran back to her camp as fast as she could. She grabbed thee and returned to the ravine. The pack had not moved. The alpha watched her approach with those burning yellow eyes. His body was tense, ready to strike. Stopped a few meters away. She held up her hands, showing she meant no harm. Then slowly, she pointed at the matron and held up the... She did not know if the gesture meant anything to them, but she had to try. The alpha growled. It was a warning, deep and dangerous. Did not run. She knelt down slowly and opened the... She showed the alpha the contents. Bandages, a bottle of antiseptic, the biogel canister. She pointed to each item, then pointed to the wound on the matron. The alpha did not move. Took a deep breath. She started walking toward the matron, one small step at a time. The hunters shifted around her, ready to attack. She could feel their eyes on her, could sense the tension in the air. One wrong move and they would tear her apart. She reached the matron's side and knelt in the blood-soaked grass. The injured creature looked at her with weak, clouded eyes. There was no aggression there, only pain and exhaustion. Worked quickly. She cleaned the wound with antiseptic, flinching when the matron cried out. She used the biogel to seal the deepest parts of the gash. She wrapped bandages around the creature's body, pulling them tight to stop the bleeding. The whole time the alpha watched. He stood so close that could feel his breath on her neck. One bite and she would be dead. But he did not bite. He waited. When she finished, sat back. Her hands were covered in blood. She was shaking with fear and exhaustion, but the matron was still breathing. The wound was closed. She would live at least for now. Stood up and backed away slowly. The pack parted to let her through. None of them attacked her. The alpha looked at her one last time, and in those 4 yellow eyes saw something she did not expect. Understanding. She walked back to her camp and collapsed by the fire. She did not sleep that night. She kept expecting the pack to come to finish what they had started, but they never came. In the morning, found something outside her shelter. A small animal freshly killed, its body still warm. A gift, food. The pack had left it for her. She looked toward the forest and saw the cub watching from the trees. It came closer than it ever had before, almost to the edge of her camp. It sniffed the air, sniffed her, and made a soft sound that was almost like a greeting. Then it ran back to the pack. picked up the food and smiled for the first time since the crash. Something had changed between them. She had given them something, and they had given something back. It was not friendship, it was not trust, not yet. But it was a beginning. 2 months had passed since crashed on 4. The forest that once felt strange and dangerous now felt almost like home. She knew its paths, its sounds, its secrets, and she was no longer alone. The matron had healed well. The wound left a scar, a pale line across her dark armor, but she moved without pain now. She walked with the pack again, strong and proud, and something had shifted in how the pack saw. She was no longer just a strange creature to watch. She had become something more. It started with small things. The cub began following her during her daily walks. At first it kept its distance, hiding behind trees and watching her with curious eyes. But each day it came closer. Soon it was walking beside her, sniffing at her hands, bumping its head against her leg like a cat asking for attention. Named the cub in her mind. She knew it was silly to name a wild predator, but she could not help it. Was too gentle, too curious, too full of life to remain nameless. Then the hunters started joining her too. When she walked through the forest looking for food, they would appear on either side of her, silent and watchful. At first she thought they were guarding her, making sure she did not cause trouble. But slowly she realized the truth. They were protecting her. She was part of their patrol now. The Alpha accepted her last. He was careful and wise, slow to trust. But one morning, when left her camp to scout a new area, the Alpha fell into step beside her. He did not look at her. He simply walked, his massive body moving through the trees like a shadow. It was an invitation, a welcome. Felt tears in her eyes, but she did not let them fall. Life found a new rhythm. Still lived in her camp, still kept her fire burning through the night. But during the day, she was part of the pack. She learned their ways, their signals, their language of growls and rumbles and body movements. When the Alpha lowered his head a certain way, it meant danger nearby. When the matron made a soft clicking sound, it meant food had been found. When rolled onto his back, it meant he wanted to play. Taught them things too. She showed them which plants made her sick, pointing and shaking her head until they understood. She showed them how to read the clouds, warning them when storms were coming. The pack had lived on this moon for generations, but humans saw the world differently, noticed patterns they had missed. She started talking to them more, not just to fill the silence, but because she wanted them to hear her voice. She told them about Earth, about oceans and mountains and cities full of people. She told them about how he used to make her laugh, how he dreamed of discovering new life on distant worlds. The pack would gather around her when she spoke. They did not understand her words, she knew that, but they understood something else. Her tone, her emotions, the feeling behind the sounds. When she was sad, would press close to her side. When she laughed, the hunters would tilt their heads with curiosity. When she cried, the matron would lay beside her in silence, offering comfort without words. One night sat by her fire and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth. Somewhere out there were ships and stations and billions of humans going about their lives. They did not know she was alive. They probably thought she was dead. She should have felt desperate. She should have spent every day trying to fix the emergency beacon, searching for a way to signal for rescue. But as she looked at the pack resting around her camp, as she felt its warm body curled against her leg, she realized something that surprised her. She was not sure she wanted to be rescued anymore. On Earth, she had been a scientist, a researcher. She had a small apartment, a few friends, a job that kept her busy. It was a good life, but it was not a full life. She had always felt like something was missing, though she could never say what. Here on this wild moon, surrounded by creatures that should have killed her, she had found it. Connection, belonging, purpose. The pack needed her, not as prey, not as a curiosity, but as one of their own. She was the healer, the strange two-legged hunter who could close wounds and predict storms. She was part of something larger than herself. Looked at the alpha, who was watching the forest with patient eyes. She looked at the matron, resting peacefully with the scars had helped heal. She looked at, small and trusting, who had chosen her as a companion. This was her family now. Days turned into weeks. Supplies ran low, but it did not matter. The pack shared their food with her. She learned to eat what they ate, to prepare the meat over her fire while they ate it raw. It was strange, but it worked. She stopped checking the emergency beacon. She stopped watching the sky for ships. She built her shelter stronger, preparing for the long term. She was not waiting to be saved anymore. She was living. One evening, a storm rolled across the forest. Thunder shook the trees and rain fell in sheets. Huddled in her shelter, worried about the pack. But then she heard movement outside. The alpha appeared first, then the matron, then the hunters. They crowded around her shelter, pressing close together for warmth. Pushed through the others and climbed into his lap, his small body trembling with fear at the thunder. Held him close and stroked his armored head. The alpha lay down beside her, his massive body blocking the wind. The matron pressed against her other side. The hunters formed a circle around them all. They were protecting her, just as she had protected the matron all those weeks ago. Closed her eyes and listened to the storm. She felt the warmth of the pack around her, the steady breathing of creatures who had accepted her as one of their own. She thought about all the things humans believed about alien life, that it would be dangerous, that it would be unknowable, that connection across species was impossible. They were wrong. Love did not need words. Trust did not need language. Family did not need shared blood. The storm passed. The forest grew quiet, fell asleep in his arms, his breath slow and peaceful, smiled and whispered into the darkness, to no one and to everyone. Thank you." The Alpha made a low rumble in response. It sounded almost like contentment. For the first time since the crash, felt truly at peace. 4 months had passed when the ship came. Heard it before she saw it. A deep roar cutting through the sky, the sound of engines she had not heard since her own crash. She looked up and saw the vessel descending through the clouds, a dark shape against the pale morning light. Her heart jumped. Rescue. After all this time, someone had found her. She started to run toward the clearing where the ship was landing, but something made her stop. The Alpha was watching the sky with his body tense and low. The hunters had gathered, their eyes bright with warning. Even had stopped playing and pressed close to his mother. The pack was afraid. Watched the ship land in a field not far from the crashed survey vessel. It was smaller than her ship had been, built for speed rather than science. There were no colonial authority markings on its hull, no official symbols, just plain metal, worn and from many journeys. She stayed hidden in the trees as the ship's door opened. 3 figures stepped out, 2 men and 1 woman, all wearing rough clothes and carrying weapons. They looked around the clearing with sharp, hungry eyes. These were not rescuers. Had heard stories about ships like this. Illegal traders who traveled to unexplored worlds looking for valuable creatures to capture and sell. Poachers, criminals, the kind of people who would pay any price for rare alien species. The kind of people who would kill a whole pack for their fangs and pelts. Her blood went cold. The poachers spread out, examining the wreckage of ship. One of them found her old camp, the shelter she had built in those first desperate weeks. He called the others over. "Someone survived," he said, his voice carrying through the quiet forest. "Human, been here a while." "Find them," the woman ordered. She seemed to be the leader. "They might know where the big ones nest. Those creatures are worth a fortune." Started backing away, but she stepped on a dry branch. The crack echoed through the trees. All 3 poachers turned toward her. She ran. She ran faster than she had ever run in her life, crashing through the undergrowth, ducking under branches, leaping over roots. But she could hear them following, their heavy boots pounding against the ground. A hand grabbed her arm and pulled her down. She fell hard, the breath knocked from her lungs. The woman stood over her, a weapon pointed at its face. "Well, well," the woman said with a cold smile. "A survivor, you must be very tough to last this long." Said nothing. Her mind was racing, trying to think of a way out. The 2 men caught up and pulled to her feet. They dragged her back to the clearing near the ships. She fought and kicked, but they were stronger. "Listen," the woman said, walking in front of with slow, confident steps. We are not here to hurt you. We just need information. We tracked some very valuable creatures to this moon. 6 legs, armored bodies, yellow eyes. You know what I am talking about." His heart stopped. "You have seen them," the woman continued, reading's face. "Good, tell us where their den is. Help us capture them and we will take you off this rock, back to civilization, back to real food and warm beds. A fair trade, yes." No. The word came out before could stop it. The woman's smile faded. "No. I will not help you hurt them." His voice was shaking, but her words were firm. "They are not things to be sold. They are living creatures. They have families. They feel pain and fear just like us." The woman laughed. It was a cruel, ugly sound. "You have been alone too long. You have gone soft in the head. Those are animals, monsters. They would eat you without a second thought." "No," said again. "They would not. They are my family." The woman stared at her for a long moment. Then she nodded to the 2 men. Pain exploded across face as one of them hit her. She fell to the ground, tasting blood. They kicked her once, twice. She curled into a ball, trying to protect herself. "Fine," the woman said. "You do not want to talk. Then you will be bait. Those creatures seem interested in you. We will use that." They dragged to the edge of the clearing and tied her to a tree. The rope cut into her wrists. Her whole body ached, but she did not cry out. She would not give them the satisfaction. The poachers set up their weapons around the clearing. Heavy guns that could pierce armor, nets that could trap even the largest creature, cages waiting to be filled. "Now we wait," the woman said. "When your friends come to save you, we will be ready." Hours passed. The sun moved across the sky, drifted in and out of consciousness, her head pounding from the blows she had taken. Then she heard it. A low rumble, felt more than heard. The sound of heavy bodies moving through the forest. The pack was coming. "Get ready," the woman hissed. The poachers raised their weapons. The alpha emerged first, stepping out of the shadows like a nightmare made real. His face was twisted with rage. His 4 eyes burned with fury. Behind him came the hunters, the matron, all of them ready to fight. The poachers opened fire. The noise was deafening. Screamed, but her voice was lost in the chaos. She saw the alpha dodge and charge. She saw one of the hunters fall, hit by a net. She saw the matron slash at a poacher with her claws, sending him flying. But there were too many weapons. The poachers were too well prepared. One of them pointed a strange device at the alpha and fired. Blue light shot out and wrapped around the creature. The alpha roared and collapsed, his body convulsing. "No!" screamed. The woman turned toward with a stun weapon in her hand. "Shut up," she said, and fired. Everything went white, then black. When opened her eyes again, she was lying on the cold ground. Night had fallen. The poachers were gone, retreated to their ship. She could see its lights glowing in the distance. They were regrouping, she realized, getting ready for another attack at dawn. Her body would not move. The stun had left her weak and shaking, but she was not alone. The shapes surrounded her, the pack. They had not fled, they had stayed. The Alpha lay nearby, still recovering from the weapon that had hit him. The matron stood over like a shield. The hunters formed a circle around them, facing outward, ready to defend against any threat. And lay pressed against the side, his small body trembling but refusing to leave. They were protecting her. Wanted to cry, wanted to tell them to run, to save themselves. But she could not speak. She could only lie there, watching the creatures who had chosen to guard her with their lives. The pack had every reason to flee. The poachers had hurt them. More attacks were coming. But they stayed, because she was one of them. As darkness closed in around her, felt a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the fire she wished she had. Family protects family, even if it costs them everything. Drifted between sleep and waking, her body ached. Her head felt like it was filled with fog, but every time she opened her eyes she saw the same thing. The pack gathered around her, standing guard against the darkness. The Alpha had recovered enough to stand. He faced the direction of the poacher's ship, his body tense and ready. The wound from the weapon had left a mark on his side, but he showed no weakness. He would not show weakness in front of his pack. The matron lay beside, her body curved like a shield. Her breathing was slow and steady. She watched the forest with patient eyes, the same eyes that had once looked at with suspicion and fear. Now there was only trust. The hunters patrolled the edges of the clearing, moving in pairs, always watching. One of them limped from an injury taken during the fight, but he did not rest. He could not rest, not while danger was near, and stayed pressed against the side, refusing to move. His small body was warm. His breath was soft against her arm. Every few minutes he would lift his head and look at her face, as if checking that she was still there. Tried to speak, but her voice came out as a whisper. "You should run, all of you. They will come back." The Alpha turned his head and looked at her. In those 4 yellow eyes, she saw something that needed no translation. "We do not leave our own." The night stretched on, fought to stay awake, but her body was too weak. She slept in short bursts, waking each time to find the pack still there, still guarding her. They did not sleep. They did not eat. They waited. Dawn came slowly. The sky turned from black to gray to pale orange. The forest began to wake, birds calling and insects humming. But the normal sounds felt wrong, like the world was holding its breath. Then heard it, the poacher's ship powering up, heavy footsteps moving through the trees, the click of weapons being loaded. They were coming. The Alpha let out a low rumble, a command to the pack. The hunters gathered close. The matron rose to her feet, even stood up, his small body trembling but his eyes fierce. The poachers emerged from the forest. All three of them, plus two more that must have stayed on the ship before. They carried heavy weapons, nets, cages. They were ready for a final battle. The woman leader walked in front, a cold smile on her face. "Last chance," she called out. "Hand over the creatures and I will let you live. Fight us and you all die together." Pulled herself up against a tree. Her legs shook, her vision blurred, but she found her voice. "Go away, leave them alone." The woman laughed. "You are barely alive. What can you do?" "Not me," said them. The Alpha stepped forward. The hunters spread out on either side. 7 creatures against 5 humans. The math was not good for anyone. The woman raised her weapon. "Then we do this the hard way." Before anyone could move, a new sound filled the air. Another ship, descending fast through the clouds. This one was larger, painted white with the blue markings of the Colonial Survey Authority. "Rescue!" The poachers looked up, their faces pale with shock. The woman cursed and started shouting orders. Back to the ship, now. But it was too late. The rescue ship landed in the clearing, its engines kicking up dust and leaves. A door opened and armed officers poured out, taking positions around the poachers. "Drop your weapons," a voice commanded through a speaker. "You are under arrest for illegal hunting and trafficking of protected species." The poachers tried to run. The officers caught them easily. Within minutes, all 5 were in restraints, being led onto the rescue ship. Watched it happen like a dream. She could not believe it was real. A woman in a flight suit approached her slowly, hands raised to show she meant no harm. The pack watched her with wary eyes, but they did not attack. "I am," the woman said, "Colonial Survey Authority. We picked up a faint signal from your ship's black box 3 days ago. We came as fast as we could." She looked at the creatures surrounding with wide eyes. "Are you okay? These things—" "They are not things," said softly. "They are my family." Stared at her, clearly not understanding. But she did not argue. She called for medical help. Doctors came with equipment and stretchers. They treated wounds, gave her water and medicine. The whole time the pack stayed close. The Alpha watched every person who approached, ready to strike if anyone tried to hurt. "We need to get you to the ship," one of the doctors said. "You need proper medical care." Nodded. She knew she had to go. Her body was badly hurt. She needed help that the forest could not give. But leaving felt like tearing out her heart. The doctors helped her stand. She took one step toward the rescue ship, then stopped. She turned back to the pack. The Alpha looked at her. The matron looked at her. The hunters looked at her. And walked forward. The small creature crossed the clearing slowly, his eyes never leaving face. The doctors stepped back nervously, but held up a hand to stop them. Reached her and stopped. He lifted his head and pressed his nose against her palm. It was the same gesture she had made 4 months ago, when she asked permission to help the wounded matron. Then made a sound, soft and questioning, a sound that was almost like words. Understood. She did not know how, but she understood. Do we protect you now? 4 months ago had protected the pack. She had healed the matron. She had taught them to trust a strange, two-legged creature from the stars. She had given them everything she had. And now they were asking if it was their turn, if they had earned the right to protect her in return. Fell to her knees and wrapped her arms around. Tears streamed down her face. She could not speak. She could only hold him, this small creature who had become her friend, her family, her reason to keep living. The Alpha walked forward and stood beside her. The matron followed. One by one, the hunters came too, until was surrounded by the pack, just as she had been surrounded that first terrifying night. But this time there was no fear, only love. I have to go, whispered, but I will come back, I promise. I will make sure no one ever hurts you again. The Alpha lowered his head until his forehead touched hers, a gesture of trust, of acceptance, of farewell. Stood up slowly. She wiped her tears and walked toward the rescue ship. Each step felt heavy. Each step took her further from the family she had found. At the door of the ship, she turned back one last time. The pack stood at the edge of the clearing, watching her. The Alpha raised his head and let out a long, low call that echoed through the forest. A farewell, a promise that they would remember. Raised her hand in response. Then she stepped inside. As the ship rose into the sky, looked down at the forest moon of 4. She saw the glow of the plants, the shine of the streams, the dark shapes of trees that had become her home. Sat beside her. What happened down there? She asked quietly. How did you survive? Smiled, though her eyes were still wet with tears. I did not survive, she said. I lived, and they taught me how. Looked confused, but she did not ask more questions. Leaned her head against the window and watched until the moon disappeared behind the clouds. She made a promise to herself, to the pack, to everything she had learned in 4 months of wilderness and wonder. She would return. She would fight to protect them. She would spend the rest of her life making sure the galaxy knew the truth. That on a small moon in a distant system, a pack of predators had taught a human the meaning of family. And a small cub had asked the most important question of all. Do we protect you now? The answer, knew, would always be yes.